The Germans also suffered significant casualties, most notably the hero of the day, Conrad the Red, who was shot in the neck with an arrow.
Oh! No! Not the neck! Ah! Alright, blowing through another suggestion. Same dude gives me a lot of suggestions, actually.
On a brisk summer morning of the year 955, the inhabitants of Augsburg woke up to a terrifying sight. A Magyar army had encircled the city and made camp on the far side of the Lech River. More ominously for the citizens of Augsburg, the Magyars brought siege engines, a departure from the raiding expeditions of yesteryear, where the invaders wrought carnage with hit-and-run attacks, but melted away once they had filled their baggage with treasure and slaves. This, however, was not a raid. It was an invasion. As you may know from chatting with me live on release of new videos, creating content is a time-consuming.
It is.
Even before I sponsored my channel, I've been using Story. Amazing service. East Francia had spent the past 3 years in a state of civil war, and that the Slavic Wends revolted in the north.
Okay, so let's talk about East Francia real quick, right? Let's just talk about Francia in general. What was East Francia, right? Because I view East Francia as like a proto Germany of sorts, right? But West Francia would become, like, you know, France, obviously. But yeah, they were also Germans too. Oh yes, I know that they assimilated and whatnot. But when they say Germany unified, right? With the whole Bismarck ordeal, wouldn't that technically speaking kind of be wrong? Because there was already a kind of a proto-German state kingdom, aka East Francia, which actually, I do know about the Kingdom of Germany, which is literally called the Kingdom of Germany, hilariously enough. So, wouldn't that technically be wrong? Wouldn't it be more accurate to say, like, Germany reunified with Bismarck? Not unified? Does that make sense? I don't know, man. Look, just like I always say, if you got something to tell me, just tell me in the comments.
The Magyars seized the opportunity to carve out a territory for themselves within Otto's realm, goading the king to come and meet them on the field of battle. At Augsburg, the Magyars attempted to storm the eastern gate, already damaged by the infighting of the previous years. But Eurich, Bishop of Augsburg, led a counterattack to push the Magyars out. Wearing no armor, he exhorted his men with prayers and passages from the Bible to fight through the hail of enemy arrows and defend their homes. The city was saved when the Magyar commander in charge of the attack fell during the fighting, and his men withdrew to take his body back to the camp. That night, through the sound of heavy rain falling, the voice of Bishop Ulrich could be heard, giving mass to the assembled Germans. It seemed there was little hope of holding off the invaders. But the next morning, word reached the inhabitants of Augsburg that King Otto was on his way to relieve the city. This belief was strengthened when the Magyars were seen diverting much of their army away from the siege, gradually moving out of sight in the distance. Weakened by years of civil war, Otto was able to muster no more than 7,000 men to face a Magyar force of some 10,000 riders, supported by 2,000 infantry.
Okay, that's not too bad.
A Magyar horse archer could loose an arrow every 8 seconds in combat, meaning that a force of 10,000 could unleash 75,000 arrows in 1 minute.
Woo! How are you beating that?
Aware of the grim task.
Oh my goodness. I just got freaking goosebumps on my skin.
Otto told his soldiers to fast and pray as they made their way through the thick
Oh yeah,
forest.
you need God.
At some point, a contingent of Magyar riders suddenly fell upon the rear of the army, surprising the enemy. Shocked, Otto's men in the rear panicked and were quickly overrun, with survivors fleeing into the woods from the chaotic melee. Back on the walls of Augsburg, the screams of battle could be heard coming from somewhere south of the city. Unable to see so far into the distance, as the hours passed, the inhabitants waited expectantly for the news of their king's fate. All hung in the balance. Then, horsemen came into view to the south. Hungarians, the sentries said, had returned to continue the siege. Word traveled quickly among the city's defenders that King Otto had been defeated.
Wait, I don't remember much of Otto. I'm pretty sure I saw this video a long time ago, but I can't remember what happened. I'm pretty sure he wasn't defeated, right? I'm pretty sure.
After the death of King Henry the Fowler in 936, it was his second son, the 24-year-old Otto, who was designated to inherit the crown of East Francia. At his coronation in Aachen, Otto received support from his late father's subjects, most importantly, the four most powerful dukes in the realm. However, unlike his father, who mirrored Caesar Augustus in referring to himself as the first among equals, and only exercised limited central authority, Otto I's unaltered goal since his coronation was to become an emperor in the mold of Charlemagne. To achieve this, the young king relied heavily on the vast silver mines in the Harz Mountains, discovered during the 920s, which enriched the East Francian monarchy far beyond the means of their rivals. Moreover, at his court, Otto surrounded himself with those who would aid him in centralizing his rule and curbing the power of the regional dukes. Needless to say, his policies proved unpopular and made him many enemies. And within a year of his coronation, civil war would engulf the kingdom. For the influential dukes of Franconia and Bavaria, replacing an undesirable king was a matter of course. They recruited Otto's older half-brother, Thankmar, who was perhaps displeased at being sidelined from the succession. He was the son by his father's first wife, who was previously a nun, which made the marriage invalid, in turn making Thankmar's legitimacy questionable. Nevertheless, the power...
That's so hilarious, bro. Whenever I hear that word bastard gets used. Like, I always forget that's unironically an insult. Does it feel like an insult? Like, I feel like bastard is like one of those insults that, I mean, I grew up saying it so much in the Caribbean when I lived in Barbados that to me, I just never view it as an insult. And no one has ever looked at me, but oh my gosh, that's such a bad word to say, you know, like.
Powerful dukes picked him as their man. Despite his young age, Otto had earned a reputation as a competent commander against the Slavs on the eastern frontier during his father's reign.
Fun fact, a lot of people, and I've been seeing this a lot between Germans and Poles, they always argue on what used to be Eastern Germany And I see a lot of people always say, oh, this is rightful German land. What's now in the modern Western Poland and what used to be Eastern Germany. And I've seen Polish people say, well, no, this is actually Slavic land, aka Polish land, because they've been there for a long time. Dude, both Germans, and when I say Germans, I mean like Germans as in Germanic peoples. Both Germans and Slavs like intermingle with each other on these lands. It wasn't really like just one group was there. In fact, the East Germanic peoples went as far as Crimea, right? They're extinct now because of the Slavs, actually. So, I mean, I feel like both sides do have good claimants to who should own these lands. But that's just something that I just want to point out.
In less than 2 months, he brought his veteran army from the eastern frontier. Thankmar was defeated in battle and later killed, and the two dukes cowed. But not punishing them harshly was a decision Otto would soon regret.
Oh, no.
Just a year later, the Duke of Franconia revolted again, this time recruiting the Duke of Lotharingia and Otto's younger brother Henry, who believed he had a claim to the throne as the firstborn son after his father's coronation in 919. Interestingly,
Wow.
Otto was perhaps cognizant of this fact, given he had kept the young Henry in house arrest during his own coronation in 936. The kingdom would be shaken by the civil war that dragged on for 2 years. But Otto finally defeated the rebels at Burton. Henry was wounded in battle and would spend another year on the run, before finally submitting to Otto. This time, however, the two rebellious dukes Eberhard and Gilbert were defeated and put to the sword on the 2nd of October, 939. Although Otto's early reign was marred by instability, it made him the ruler he would be remembered as. For the next 10 years, between 941 and 951, he exercised undisputed domestic power. He expanded the kingdom into Slavic territories in the east and defeated Boleslaus to regain suzerainty over Bohemia. In the west, Otto showed his brilliance as a politician. He fostered friendly relations with King Rudolf II of Burgundy, continuing his father's policy of maintaining close ties with the House of Welf, who...
You know, I always forget that the Burgundians or Burgundians, I don't even know how the heck you pronounce his name, but I always forget that they were a thing in this time period. Like, there's so much kingdoms during medieval Europe that it's so hard to keep up.
were Frankish kings of Burgundy and close relatives of the Carolingian family. So, when Rudolf II died and his rival Hugh of Provence took power, Otto intervened in the succession to place Rudolf's son, Conrad I, on the throne, thereby pulling the kingdom of Burgundy into the East Francian sphere of influence. Then, in late 950, an emissary from Italy crossed the Alps, carrying a message from Adelaide, the widowed Queen of Italy, and sister of Conrad I of Burgundy. She escaped captivity of the usurper King Berengar II and sought protection and marriage from Otto. Ever the opportunist, the king accepted, all too aware of Adelaide's vast wealth and political power. Moreover, marrying her would grant Otto a strong claim to the Italian throne and ultimately the title of emperor. Preparations for the expedition into Italy began at once. However, in early summer of 951, Otto's son Ludolf, Duke of Swabia, invaded Lombardy on his own accord. His motives remain unclear, but after crossing the Alps he found little support in northern Italy and was unable to sustain his troops. Facing destruction, he was left with no choice but to wait until Otto's army came to his rescue.
What?
The king
What is my boy doing?
received Ludolf's troops into his command, furious at his son for his independent action. The relationship between father and son was clearly souring. By September...
Bro, I swear, this man Otto has so much problems with his family, bro. What in the world?
951, Otto descended into the Po Valley, the Italian clergy and nobility immediately siding with him and providing aid to his army. Berengar, recognizing his weakened position, fled the capital. Arriving at Pavia, Otto was crowned in a lavish ceremony.
Aye, aye, aye.
Charlemagne before him, he was now concurrently King of Germany and King of Italy. His bride Adelaide was escorted from Canossa to Pavia, where the two married. The subjugation of Italy, however, would take years, diverting Otto's resources and attention away from affairs in East Francia. Worse, his already fractured relationship with his son Ludolf was now beyond repair, after it became known that Otto would favor an heir sired with Adelaide instead of him.
It's so crazy to me how I'm looking at this map of Western and Central Europe. All of this is literally freaking just Germans. West Francia came from Germania. The Franks, Mercia, Wessex, those came from the Angles and Saxons, which also are Germanic people. Germans, you know. I only see Hungary, which is even European. Bohemia, which is just Slavic. Italy, which is Romance, Latin. There's also the Slavic tribes here as well, but I'm talking about Western Europe. And then you got Brittany, which is Celtic. This is crazy. It's crazy how all of this used to be Celtic lands. Like, a lot of people really forget like how much lands the Celtic inhabited before they were driven out, assimilated, slaughtered, just driven out, quite frankly speaking, in many ways, unfortunately. But wow, that is, the more I look at this, the more I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize the influence of the freaking Germans was that big. Godly. Please do not come in my comments saying actually it's Germanic. Bro, yes. It's literally the same thing. I'm clearly not talking about the modern German nationality. I'm just talking about the people. Okay?
Angered, Ludolf made way for Swabia, planning a rebellion.
Even Burgundy is also, I think Burgundy is also freaking Germanic as well.
Easy to gather support for his cause, as many nobles north of the Alps frowned upon Otto's marriage to a foreigner, fearing a political power shift from Germany to Italy. Among the nobles endorsing Ludolf's rebellion was Conrad, Duke of Lorraine, Otto's very own son-in-law. The king set out for East Francia to reassert his authority.
Yeah, man.
By the start of 953, the kingdom had descended into civil war. The rebels toppled Otto's brother Henry, Duke of Bavaria, which persuaded the nobles of Franconia and Swabia, and even some in Otto's home province of Saxony, to join Ludolf.
Wow.
Otto still had most of the Lotharingian nobles on his side, but by late 953 the kingdom's strongest duchies had turned against him.
Oh,
He was
boy.
well and truly losing his grip on power, and in real danger of being deposed. To the east, the Slavs took advantage of the turmoil to raid deep into Frankish territory in the spring of 954, reaching as far as Saxony. Worse, a large Magyar invasion force.
Crazy. You have Kiev all the way over there. But didn't you just have these Slavic tribes here? White Croats. I'd never heard of that. What is
Commanded
that?
by Burchu, crossed the southeastern border.
Ooh.
As the refugees fled west, they reported on the carnage and devastation that befell Bavaria and Franconia.
No!
Ludolf and Conrad
I like the
prepared
black color.
defenses of their domains as the marauding horsemen crossed the Rhine. In an effort to protect his lands, Ludolf invited the Magyar chieftains to join him at a feast on Palm Sunday. There, he showered them with gold and silver. Likewise, Conrad agreed to allow them safe passage into West Francia, where some of the bands headed to continue their raids. But wining and dining the Magyars proved to be a disastrous decision by Ludolf, as rumors quickly spread that it was he who invited them to attack the kingdom, intended to use them against his father Otto.
Oh no.
The fact that this very likely wasn't true didn't matter, because overnight public opinion turned against the rebels, and with it went much of the support they enjoyed.
Bro. But but he saved them though, what?
Conrad, Duke of Lorraine, managed to reconcile with Otto, leaving Ludolf to his fate. The king went on to fight against his son in 3 major encounters, finally cornering him in Swabia, where Ludolf surrendered and was subsequently stripped of his ducal titles. The 2-year-long civil war
That is, dude, what in the world, man? Father and son fighting? What the heck?
ended. It posed the biggest threat yet to Otto's rule, but from it he emerged as the absolute ruler of Germany. Otto wasted no time in addressing the urgent situation in the north. Together with his loyal Margraves, both veteran commanders in their own right, the king pushed back the Slavs and erected numerous fortresses on key river crossings to dissuade them from further raids. Spending the early months of 955 in Magdeburg, Otto
Wasn't there a Polish kingdom? I am certain there was a Polish kingdom at this point. I'm not sure why he's not showing it. I'm pretty sure there was. I could be wrong. There's a Polish kingdom at one point, which, funny enough, had similar borders to the modern day Poland.
tended to administrative matters when a disturbing message reached him. The Magyars were back. Commanded by Burchu, Lehel, and Schur, 10,000 fighters re-entered the East Francian territory, accompanied by up to 6,000 slaves and laborers to build and operate siege engines. In years past, the Magyars, operating from the Carpathian Basin, lived by a mixture of mercenary work and seasonal raids on settled populations. But this time, they didn't just come to pillage the land. This time, they came to stay. Perceiving weakness in the East Francian monarchy, still to recover from the civil war, the Magyars moved to seize power in Bavaria and Swabia. Their first major target was the city of Augsburg. The siege began on the 8th of August. Augsburg's small garrison and its walls, damaged during the recent turmoil within the kingdom, would not hold out for more than a few days. Time was of the essence. To the west, Otto finally arrived at Ulm with his experienced Saxon retinue, along with troops he hastily recruited on the march, 7,000 men in total. Having made camp on the shores of the Danube to briefly rest his men, the king wasted little time before continuing on towards Augsburg. He divided his army into 8 divisions. The 3 in the vanguard were the indigenous Bavarians who knew the lay of the land. Behind them was 1 division from Franconia, followed by Otto's veteran Saxons and Thuringians, and his personal retinue. 2 Swabian divisions were behind the king's division, and 1 well-trained Bohemian division made up the rear of the column, tasked with guarding the baggage train. Instead of following a more direct road to Augsburg, the Frankish army continued deeper into the forest, where the thick vegetation offered protection on either side of the column. Soon, however, the Germans were detected by enemy scouts. Once the Magyars besieging Augsburg learned of Otto's presence, they moved to meet the threat. Seeing much of the invading host abandoning their siege works raised the spirits of the city folk, for they realized that help was on the way. With the noose around the city loosened...
Bro, imagine seeing that. Oh my gosh. I'm imagining myself in that situation right now. Holy, yo. That's a feeling that I really can't even... I cannot contemplate, quite frankly speaking. Holy moly. Wouldn't they try to do a sally and destroy the siege works? I'm watching this thinking to myself, are they gonna do a sally? Now is the time to do a sally, because usually when you're getting reinforcements or getting help, you do a sally to put pressure on the enemy so that they don't go and destroy the help. But
a couple of hundred Augsburg men formed a contingent and moved to link up with the king.
Yeah, I see.
Unnoticed by the few Magyars remaining in the siege camps. German scouts had likewise spied the redeployment of the Magyar army. Sensing the battle was upon them, Otto held up the holy lance of Constantine, girding his men for the sacrifice to come on the battlefield.
What is that? The Holy Lance of Constantine? What is that?
However, the tricky Magyars had other ideas. Having detected the German column some hours ago, Burju detached a contingent of riders, sending them around the forest to ambush the enemy. The swift-moving Magyars stunned the unsuspecting Bohemians. Unable to match the horsemen, the rear of the German column was decimated in minutes. The Magyar charge halted only when they ran into a few Swabian units, who lost their cohesion while struggling to face about to meet the threat. But to no avail. The Magyars made light work of the disorganized Swabians, routing them after a brief battle.
Wow! Bro, how are they gonna win this?
Burju and the other chieftains had engineered the capture of the German baggage train, stripping them of their supplies. Now the plan was to continue harassing the rear of the enemy column and force more of them to flee, until eventually Otto was left with no choice but to give up and turn back. But instead of pressing the advantage, the rapacious Magyar horsemen disobeyed orders and fell upon the baggage train, looting anything of value. Apparently, the discipline of some Magyar contingents was not as rigid as it had been in years past. King Otto, on the other hand, was leading a highly regimented force. and he gave the order for Conrad the Red to move back with his Franconians and lead a counterattack. Conrad still had to prove his loyalty, having recently been one of the key leaders of the failed rebellion against the king.
Show yourself.
This was his chance to restore his honor. The dismounted Magyars were so engrossed in their looting that they failed to notice the enemy until it was too late. The ferocity of Conrad's attack threw the horsemen into disarray. The sortie was a thorough success as the Franconian heavy cavalry ploughed their way through the lightly armored Magyars, felling many and putting the rest to flight. With his
that is such a surreal feeling to me, because what could be of such value that you just lose all cohesion? Like what? Money, wine, bread? Like, surely it can't be that valuable, bruh. Come on. These were the same Magyars that was completely decimating everything that they were fighting against. Oh my gosh, bruh. You're telling me that it was that good that you lose all cohesion, man?
His honor restored, Conrad made his way back towards the main body of the army. Flushed with victory, he roused the Germans and even restored order among some of the scattered Bohemian units, rallying them for the larger battle ahead. Meanwhile, Otto's column had by now emerged onto the field. The Magyars, meanwhile, were deploying to the north. Builchu, Lechfeld, and Schur were determined to give battle, encouraged by the perceived disunity within the German ranks in light of their recent civil war. A victory at Augsburg would pave the way for the creation of a Magyar kingdom in Bavaria and Swabia. Moreover, it could open the rest of the East Francian kingdom to conquest and end the Saxon line of rulers that began a generation earlier.
Hate YouTube ads?
That's insane to me. Some Saxons went to Britannia, and then the Saxons that stayed, oh my goodness gracious me. That's so, I don't know, how do I describe it? I mean, the Saxons in Britannia at this point, I mean, are these still even Saxons at this point? I don't know. But wouldn't that but if the Saxons here had gotten defeated, I mean, technically, the Saxons would still be a thing, though. 100%. 100% be a thing. Especially because of the fact that there's still Saxons in Britannia. Not just that, but there's still Saxony, which still exists.
The Magyar host consisted of some 10,000 horsemen, supported by up to 2,000 infantry. Meanwhile, having lost about 1,000 men in the ambush during the march, Otto was outnumbered 2-1, having 6,000 troops left under his command. Unsurprisingly, the 500 men of Augsburg approaching from the east were a welcome sight. However, for nearly 40 years, the Saxon rulers of East Francia had focused on developing the heavy, armored cavalry, a deadly instrument when used correctly, which would go on to become the quintessential component of medieval warfare.
So it was the Germans who started that infamous heavy cavalry.
Otto's reign, German craftsmanship possibly provided the infantry greater protection from arrows, their armor and shields capable of deflecting most strikes.
That is wild.
Well suited for the narrow field at Augsburg. Half a century earlier, at the Battle of Pressburg, the fast, mobile Magyars exploited the expansive battlefield to outmaneuver the Frankish army, ultimately encircling and destroying it. But the constrained battlefield at Lechfeld between the river and the thick forest limited maneuverability, which favored the slower but better armored German units.
Yeah.
Aware of this advantage, Otto ordered the attack. The German king kept the men from charging full tilt at their light and nimble opponents. The kings of East Francia had long ago learned that lesson. Instead, while the Magyars slanted their line to move into their crescent formation, hoping to lure the Germans into a charge with a false retreat by the center and a subsequent ambush from the flanks, Otto sent his infantry forward in a shield wall, tasking Conrad on the left wing to keep pace with the infantry, before performing a feint to attempt to drag the enemy horse archers out of position. Considering he was heavily outnumbered, sending the infantry ahead was risky, but Otto deemed it a sacrifice necessary to execute his battle plan.
Okay.
On the right wing,
I mean, plus they're heavily armored, so...
the king and his Saxons and Thuringians provided a strong right arm of the German attack. The Bavarian infantry soon came into contact with the enemy center, and the battle commenced. The Magyar horsemen on the wings, however, unable to reach Otto's heavy cavalry with their arrows, drifted wide, out of position, thus breaking their crescent formation and advancing forward to get into range. The units on the right moving to meet Conrad, while the Magyar left closed the distance with Otto and unleashed their arrow volleys. Seeing that the enemy took the bait, Otto ordered the cavalry to charge. The Magyars pulled away from the incoming Germans, unleashing their arrows as they went. But having funneled too many units into the narrow corridors on the flanks, the horsemen found themselves constricted and unable to maneuver, struggling to pick up speed.
This is going to be a slaughter. This is going to be a slaughter. Bro, the Germans are so heavily armored, bro. Like, dude, this is the ideal position you want to be in when you're heavily armored. Because, oh, they're just going to slice and dice. Oh, my goodness.
They were soon caught by the Germans. Having lured the nimble riders to advance too far forward, Otto had effectively flattened their crescent formation, his heavy Bavarian infantry pinning down the Magyar center and making it difficult for them to feign retreat. On the wings, the congested Magyar horsemen could not find room to slip away and were forced to fight it out. It quickly became clear that the lightly armored riders stood no chance against the Frankish heavy cavalry that steamed right through them. Thousands of Magyar riders in the front ranks were cut down, and soon the second line was struck by the German heavy cavalry. In the center, the Magyar units did eventually manage to break away, attempting to feign retreat and lure the Germans away from their battle line. But Otto was ferocious in maintaining discipline and commanded the men not to give in to the wild pursuit. Magyar leaders, Bulchu and Lehel, must have held their ground on the wings, for they were both captured in the fighting and later executed.
Wow.
The rest of the Magyar army, however, retreated in good order, Otto forbidding his troops to chase after them. The Germans also suffered significant casualties, most notably the hero of the day, Conrad the Red, who was shot in the neck with an arrow.
Oh! No! Not the neck! Ah! Oh, that hurt my neck. That... Oh, nah, bro. Nah, he felt that. I know he felt that.
The retreating Magyars headed for their siege camp. It was then that Bishop Ulrich saw the return of the seemingly calm horse archers from the battle and presumed that the Magyars had been victorious and were coming to resume the siege. But, to the immense relief of the inhabitants, the invaders stopped only briefly in their camp to pick up whatever supplies they could carry, before abandoning the siege and retreating east. Soon after, King Otto could be seen in the distance, riding triumphantly at the head of the German column.
Oh, man.
The chase of the fleeing Hungarians was suspended until the following morning, but word was sent out to the eastern garrisons and fortresses that all river crossings and roads were to be closed and blocked. Kill those fleeing was Otto's order. Thus, the trap
How in the world did he get the orders out so fast?
shut, and the second stage of Otto's strategy for destroying the power of the Hungarians began in earnest. Now without their leaders and separated into smaller, disparate bands, the retreating Hungarians found themselves caught between Otto's army in their rear and the chain of fortifications and garrisons guarding the eastern border, as well as additional Frankish troops aboard the ships that patrolled the rivers to catch any fleeing stragglers. And so it was that over the coming weeks, the remainder of the once mighty Magyar army was methodically annihilated. The impact of the defeat at the Lechfeld on the Magyar tribes was such that they abandoned their semi-nomadic way of life and came into the European fold by adopting Christianity, much the same as Otto's Saxon ancestors had done a century and a half previously. In time, the Hungarian kingdom would become a staunch defender of Europe in its own right, fighting against Mongol and Ottoman Turk armies over the centuries.
Wow. So the Hungarians became what they swore to destroy.
Otto had achieved a stunning victory that had not only prevented the Magyars from forming a kingdom within the East Francian territory, but had also ended the Magyar raids into Germany for good.
Bro, look at Bulgaria.
Otto's
That's so
ascendancy
thick.
as Europe's foremost monarch and defender was confirmed after Lechfeld, and he was now the undisputed master of the north and central lands east of the Rhine, as well as northern Italy. After some years of negotiation with the Pope, Otto was crowned emperor in Rome, and so began the Holy Roman Empire, which would stand for more than 800 years.
Wow, I thought it lasted 1,000 years.
If you enjoyed watching at
800. Oh yeah, because Napoleon. Oh, okay, yeah, 800 years. Ooh, that's still impressive. 800 years. 800 years. Yo, golly, man. 800 years. That's crazy. Anyways, you made it all the way to the end of the video. If you aren't new to my channel, go like. If you are new to my channel, make sure you go subscribe. If you like my reactions, if you like what I have to say, and also go like, go check out my other videos on the channel. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.